So let's see. The country is ruled by the king and members of his own family. So I will tell you a story about what's been going on in the last couple years in Saudi Arabia with a real shift in power there, and the new prince, who is pretty interesting guy. The king serves as both the head of government, head of state. He is the ultimate authority. Again, autocrat. So he is the only person making the decisions. He's responsible for making and enforcing the country's laws. Conservative religious leaders have a great deal of influence in decision making by the monarch. Now remember, those people, what they mean by conservative religious leaders. So they are Sunni in Saudi Arabia, a pretty strict Sunni group. And these are not only strict Sunnis, they're also usually relatives of the king. So he generally has trust in these people. So when they are giving him advice or talking to him about something they think should happen, he usually can count on them. Now, like I said, I got some stories to tell you about what's been going on. Kings don't always trust their relatives because everybody wants power, apparently. But for the most part, he does have that help for himself. There's no constitution, but the Quran acts as the constitution. So here is the theocracy part. Whatever is in the Quran being the holy book of Islam, is the law. So the holy book is the law. So they are a theocracy. And in Islam, that is called Sharia law. There it is right there, Sharia law. S-H-A-R-I apostrophe A. You can leave out the apostrophe in English, it'd be all right. Okay, their leadership. Saudi Arabia is ruled by a hereditary monarch. Remember, hereditary means that it's succession, that you are born into this role. And when you become king, now there might be several of you that qualify to be king. So there may be some scuffling going on, some power struggles about who's going to be the next king. They've had that going on there before. Let's see. The King of Saud has been a member of the Al Saud family. That's repeated, so yeah. And there is Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, King of Saudi Arabia. How do they pick him? You don't pick him. There's no picking. He's just picked for you. He's born into it. When the king dies, the Saudi family will announce the next king. Right now, he is the king, but his son is doing a lot of the moving and shaking of things that are happening in Saudi Arabia. One good thing he did was change laws about women driving, and he has allowed women to drive. He's done some other things maybe not so nice. So what's their legislature? Saudi Arabia doesn't really have a legislature, but they do have something called the Consultative Council. Consultative Council. It can propose legislation to the king, but it has no legal power itself. In other words, hey, king, maybe we could do this. And he says, I'll think about it. And then he might say, oh, okay. Or he might say no. Either way, it's only up to him. These are just suggestions. There are 150 members and a chairman that are chosen by the king to serve 4-year terms. So he picks out who these people will be that give him advice, and they're there for 4 years. And of course, I think most of the time you're going to want to tell him stuff he wants to hear anyway. You don't want to get on his bad side. The king chooses 2/3 of the members of the council, while men in the country vote for the remaining 1/3 of the members. So there you go. Now, they have been giving in baby steps women voting rights. Actually, the first thing they did, and I think is still in effect, is that women can participate in debates. Like they can be at political functions and have a voice. But I don't think they're moving towards voting, and I don't think they can vote yet, but we might need somebody to look that up for us and make sure I'm right. Maybe women can vote now. We should probably find out. But again, you know, what's your voting doing here? If you're a man or a woman, even if they do give women the right, you know, you're voting for 1/3 of the members, but in the end, even if you're an elected person, do you have any voice to change whatever the king doesn't want? No. So, you know, this is what I would call the FACO voting, the FACO democracy. Is it a real democracy? Does anything change based on you choosing leaders? Probably not here. The council mostly consists of members of the royal family, people that are loyal to the king, people that tell the king what he wants to hear. So voting is kind of this thing to make you feel good. It's a feel-good vote. Ooh, I'm in a democracy now. How lucky am I? There are no political parties in Saudi Arabia. You don't need any. There's nobody opposes anybody else with a different point of view that you would want support for. It's just one opinion, that's the king's. There's the Consultative Assembly, beautiful building in Riyadh. Riyadh is the capital of Saudi Arabia. So what does the citizen do in Saudi Arabia? In 2004, the Saudi government began allowing men who were 21 and older to vote for low-level government positions, but all top-level positions are still appointed by the king. Citizens have very little opportunity to participate in government and have very little say in what the government does. What are you going to do? Is that a democracy? I don't think that is. That's not a lot of freedom. All right, personal freedoms. Human rights and personal freedoms are often denied in Saudi Arabia. Citizens are not allowed to practice any religion other than Islam. Public speech and the media are heavily censored by the government. Saudi Arabia has long been criticized for going against human rights, and because the country values its position in the world economy, it's working to correct some of these injustices. Wait till I tell you what's happened lately. Oh my. It's a pretty big deal. Okay. All right, let's move on to Turkey. The Grand National Assembly building of Turkey. That's really a pretty building there. I think Turkey is a pretty country. You would probably like to visit there someday if you could. So what's up with Turkey? How'd they come to be Turkey? Here's a little bit for you. Turkey is one of the most democratic countries in the Middle East, although its military has long been a powerful force in the country's government. They have tried to overthrow their governments many, many times. They have military coups about every couple of years. Hadn't happened lately because they have a new president, Erdogan. Now remember, these are the people, the Turks, who lost all of their land at the end of World War I. They were the Ottomans, and they sided with the Germans. And when the Germans and the Ottomans lost World War I, the Turks lost all their land except for Turkey. So the British allowed the Ottomans to have that little piece of land left that is now the country of Turkey. Since World War II, Turkey has had many attempts, some successful overthrows of the government by the military. There's a great video of the president calling on the phone to the news organization, the news media, television, and talking because he ran away when the military moved in a couple of years ago. He ran away. It's like, I'm safe. They're not going to take us down. And they didn't. They weren't successful, but it made him popular for doing that. Currently, the country is a parliamentary democracy, but will change to a presidential one here. They are changed now. They are right. Well, that referendum passed, so that's a done deal. He is going from a parliamentary system to a presidential one where you vote for the president, but guess what? He's going to rig it to where he doesn't need to get voted on. He'll be there for probably his life. It's crazy. Okay, they have a prime minister, is the chief executive, who works with the National Assembly. President is head of state, directly elected by the people. So this is what the prime minister will become. He will be the president in 2019. He's the prime minister. This guy is going to be the new head of the new power in Turkey. And I would have to say he's going to behave a lot like a dictator. That's unfortunately kind of where Turkey seems to be headed. It's sad. Hopefully not. Maybe things will turn around, but right now it's starting to look like he's going to have more fake-o elections or no elections and just hold all the power indefinitely. How are they chosen? The president chooses the, well, you know, this is for now. Next year it will be different. Prime minister, the president chooses one member from the parliament who will be the prime minister. So this person picks this person from the parliament. And then the president gets directly elected. But now the president in 2019, they changed their constitution. This will be the one with the most power. So Erdogan has made himself more powerful than the prime minister. They're the Grand National Assembly. That's what the parliament or the legislature is called. It also, like Israel, is unicameral. Only one body in the legislature to pass votes. The Grand National Assembly passes all laws and supervises the work through its committees. See, there's that half circle thing again. You know, half circle and then people stand up here. Nobody's come up with a better way to do that, I guess. I don't know. Is there any other way to do this? I don't know. What else could you do? It reminds me of a classroom, really. You know, listening to somebody talk, I guess. Need a whiteboard back there. In Turkey, citizens elect both the president and members of the parliament, so they do vote. Then the elected president chooses one member from the parliament to serve as the prime minister. The prime minister nominates a council of ministers with the president's approval, and they help run the government. So they have been a long time, even with their military coups, been known as a free and fair democracy. They had real voting. Now, since this prime minister, the president who will make himself president for life next year, I don't know that I would put them on the same field as Israel with voting rights now. We'll see. You know, that's the unfortunate thing. In 2017, Turkey citizens voted to change their government from parliamentary to presidential. It doesn't take place till 2019, really, I think January, so coming right up in the next couple of months. But this is unfortunate. There was really no need to do this other than to give Erdogan more power. And that's what's happening. You got to be 18 to vote. You don't have to vote by law. You can participate in elections through voting for the president and for the parliament. They have all these freedoms right now, but I would say lately Erdogan's become more strict on religious practice, kind of like, you know, acting less European and more Middle Eastern, or more like the countries in Southwest Asia. For a long time, Turkey's been considered to kind of act more like Europe because they kind of are, you know, in the middle of both. They're half Europe and they're half Southwest Asia. But because most of their citizens are Islamic, they've kind of been grouped with the rest of the folks in Southwest Asia. And of course, they're the Ottomans, so they have that same shared history with Southwest Asia, more so than they have a history that is shared with Europeans. And there they're voting. It's a lot like what happened in Israel. They just stick it in a box right there. It's an old-fashioned way to do it, but probably a really safe way to make sure that nobody can hack machines with your votes. All right, what personal freedoms do they have? They got room for improvement. Women's rights are an issue, you know, that kind of falls back on, I think women's issues are a big deal in many countries. Our country too, in many ways, but they've got some things to work on there. Turkish government has been accused of limiting the rights of the Kurds. You know that the Kurds have their land there, that the Turks won't, you know, let them have their own country. They're kind of treated that same way the Palestinians are in Israel. That's the way